All right, almost there. So we've already jointed this one edge as we just did on the jointer, and so it's nice and flat. This is a really well tuned up board. So now we need to mill this last edge. Now I could have very easily run this over the jointer in the same way I did in that last video. The problem with that is that there's no assurance that these edges will be parallel if I'm on the jointer, and getting these things parallel is critical, especially when you ever get joinery or any type of other board connection to this piece. You really need to be able to have that assurance that accuracy is what we're after. Okay, so we're on the table saw. That is not an accident. The table saw, I would argue, is the best way to go about this, and it definitely gets you into a place of greater accuracy. So with this, what I'm going to be doing is keeping this board nice and tight up against the fence. Right where this blade is going to first make contact with the board, that's going to be the part that I need to watch for when running this through the machine. So in other words, if I were to raise this up to try to capture these blades up in the air, the pressure is going to start to want to pull this thing down. But if I bring this down into the board, just like I would if I were milling a flat board, then the bed is going to support this workpiece, and that's going to be the critical part. So as this blade is spinning, it can't really pull this down. And as I continue to make these cuts, I'm always watching for where that connects, as well as keeping it tight into the fence. So I'll do that. This is the area that gets a little bit tricky at the end because I need to push this through and then get it past the blade. With that said, just going to use a push stick, and that should create a situation where my hands are nowhere near that blade and I can get all the way through safely. Okay, so the questions that you might be asking are, why not just use the bandsaw? And or maybe you're not thinking that, but hopefully you will now. The bandsaw is a great option, but the bandsaw does not, just like the previous video we talked about for cutting these individual strips, it doesn't cut an accurate edge. And so if I were to do it this way, off the table saw, I will get a glue line cut, so I can glue something straight onto this if I need to, but I can also reference this for laying out joinery or what have you. The bandsaw is going to make a really rough edge. All the same techniques hold true, though. I would still need a fence. I would need to hold this piece down where the blade makes contact. I need to do some level of reworking this piece after it comes off of the bandsaw. And for those reasons, I think the table saw, one machine, I can get this thing done and go from there. There is another option. Once you've jointed, so if the table saw is not going to work, or if there are safety concerns about it's a funky curve, or maybe it's a compound curve instead of this simple sweep here, you can set up a router with a strange looking base. It'll have two legs and then just a straight bit cutting down. As long as the workpiece is secured somehow to whatever bed you're using, you can just work this router back and forth, and then that way it will true up this edge and do the entire thing through. And I think, pardon me, if you're in the process of doing a lot of bent lamination work, then setting up a router for doing that is probably prudent. It's probably a good choice. Let me show you this way, and then let me know in the comments if you think a router would be a better option. Okay, so that said, let me go ahead and cut this. Shouldn't be a problem. So always a bit of an awkward transition in getting to that place where I needed to pause, reach for the push deck. That's why I had it really close and ready, and then holding on the other side of the blade. But as long as you're stable in that transition and this board is not going to be tweaked or pulled or shifted in any way, stability here is the name of the game. And then now you have pieces with two edges that are parallel and square. And I should also mention that in doing this, it would have probably been wise to set up the fence to the exact width that you need for this process. As it turns out, I got 1.5 inches out of 8-quarter material, and that's fairly accurate for what you can expect. So if you need something wider than that, thicker stock would probably be a better option. So, okay, cool. Hopefully that was helpful, everyone. See you.